Good afternoon, good evening also to some of the colleagues online. I'm Dan Zhengyu, Chief of Demographics at UNICEF's Office of Strategy and Evidence. It is my great pleasure to warmly welcome those of you here with us in person today, as well as colleagues joining virtually from around the world. And also our distinguished panelists to the side event of the 57th session of the UN Statistical Commission. Today's event, communicating about migration statistics, new report and the special considerations for children on the move and other marginalized groups, is co-hosted by the International Data Alliance for Children on the Move, IDAC, and the United Nations Statistical Division. We are especially pleased to officially launch the new technical report on communicating about migration statistics. It's a joint report with UN Statistical Division and also the IDAC. In today's session, colleagues will introduce the report in greater detail, share insights into the work of IDAC and also UN Statistical Division, and bring in youth perspectives. They will also highlight country experience and the promising practices in communicating migration statistics effectively and ethically. It is now my distinct pleasure to invite João Pedro Azevedo, whom many of us know as JP, to deliver the opening remarks. JP is UNICEF's first chief statistician, appointed in February 2023 at UNICEF headquarters to lead the organization's global data and the statistical work. He also holds the role of Deputy Director, leading the data and analytics work at UNICEF. So JP, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Dungeon. Thank you so much, colleagues, for joining us this lunchtime session. It's a great pleasure and honor to have you all here. And together with Dungeon, I would like to welcome you today at the UNICEF House. And for those of you online that are joining us as well, it's good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's great to have you all. And I would like to start also by thanking our partners on the IDAC initiative, in particular Eurostat, IOM, OECD, UNHCR, who many are here represented today in this session. It's great to have this partnership with you all, and together we are much stronger. So, why are we doing this discussion, right? I think for those of you who join us on the Friday seminar, you will see that AI is one of the topics of, I think, this commission, this meeting, and I think we'll be coming back over and over again. And AI is largely about communication, or one of the main uses is going to be on communication. And I think it is in that context that I see this piece as particularly relevant, right? It's often something that we talk about. It's often, we don't have reference documents on how to communicate official statistics in our data work. So it is particularly timely to have today the opportunity to discuss with this distinguished panel the need for migration statistics and the importance of communicating responsibly and paying particularly attention on marginalized groups on the move, including children, of course. Now, we would like to, of course, thank also the European Union for the support of this work, right? And remind us all that accurate migration data are essential for effective governance and policymaking. They allow governments, UN agencies, and other stakeholders to design policies and programs that uphold human rights and leave no one behind. Without reliable data, vulnerable populations on the move, such as children, are more likely to have their rights violated. And being counted is the first step of being protected. That said, that alone do not guarantee better outcomes for people on the move. Equally important is how we collect, analyze, and use data, and critically, how we communicate them, especially now at the moment in which large language models are being the intermediary in much of our engagement with official statistics and data in general. Miscommunication of data of marginalized groups has real-life consequences, particularly for the most vulnerable, like children. As statisticians working to support human rights, our mandate is to ensure that evidence strengthens protection, accountability, and informed decision-making. Just an anecdote, we've recently ran a benchmarking exercise and query about 3 companies, Google, Anthropics, and OpenAI, did about 57,000 queries. And what we notice is that for some of these companies, they have already created safety triggers that prevents the user to query our statistics automatically without one specifying the use that you want to make with that statistics. And the reason is because of the political sensitivities and how some groups are misusing our information, the statistics that we are talking here. So things like under 5 mortality, migration are topics that raise this red flag and prevent users from automatically downloading, just to indicate how this field is evolving and how we're becoming more aware of the sensitivities of this kind of work. So today we're pleased to launch this new technical report, Communication about Migration Statistics, which underscore the responsibility of the United National Statistical Offices to communicate accurately, responsibly, and transparently about people on the move, particularly those that rights might be at risk. As Dungeon said, there's a collaboration between the IDAC, the International Data Alliance for Children on the Move, and the UN Statistical Division and the University of Oxford. It provides practical tools to support ethical and effective communication of migration statistics, especially in those sensitive and highly politicized contexts. The report includes promising practices from several countries that are already demonstrating how NSOs can fulfill this collective responsibility. And we are grateful to have the distinguished representatives of Serbia and Indonesia for joining us today to present their own practices. Thank you. Our hope is that more countries will draw from these examples to communicate on how to communicate data and statistics responsibly, and also share their experience in best practice. We're also pleased to have the youth representative joining us today. Their presence and participation is a critical reminder that communication of statistics about children and youth on the move cannot be truly ethical or responsible without their inclusion in their process. So just to close, we're engaged today in this discussion. We ask you all to remember that behind every statistics, there is a human story. When communication is done right for the most vulnerable, outcomes improve for everyone on the move. And thank you very much for all your participation.
Thank you, JP, for these very insightful remarks and also setting the scene today, for the discussion. Also, thank you for mentioning University of Oxford. I kind of forgot, indeed, we have 2 panelists from the University of Oxford, so great. Yeah, I'll hand over to Mazia Rango. Mazia Rango, she's the IDAC coordinator, also the project manager at UNICEF's Office of Strategy and Evidence. It's a new division, always harder to remember the name. Mazia, over to you.
Thank you so much, Dungeon, and a very warm welcome to everyone here who joined us at the UNICEF House in New York, everybody online, and thank you for your patience. We are already running quite behind schedule. We had a bit of an IT crisis right before the start of this event. So thank you so much for bearing with us, and thank you particularly to those of you who are, in other time zones and for whom it's probably quite late right now. So I have the pleasure of introducing the panel that we have today. It's really an excellent panel. We're honored to be joined by them. And we have a packed agenda, so I'm just going to do this quite quickly. We also have a bit of an icebreaker exercise for everyone, so I hope you'll participate in that. But first of all, please join me in welcoming our panel. In order of appearance, we have Maria Isabel Cobos Hernandez, who's the Chief of Social and Gender Statistics section, the Gender Statistics section at the UN Statistics Division. We have Robert McNeil, who's the Deputy Director of the Migration Observatory at the University of Oxford and researcher at the Center on Migration Policy and Society at the University of Oxford. His colleague Peter Walsh, who's Senior Researcher and Lecturer in Migration Studies at the Migration Observatory as well. And then we are joined also online by Mrs. Daniela Nedic, who is Acting Assistant Commissioner at the Serbian Commissariat for Refugees and Migration. And thank you in particular to you, Daniela, for being with us so late in Belgrade. And then here again, we have two more country representatives. We're very pleased to be joined by Dr. Amalia Diningar Vidyasanti. I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly, who's the Chief Statistician at Statistics Indonesia, BPS. We have Dr. Gotita Dotradze, who's the Executive Director and the Chair of the Board of the GeoStat, the Georgian National Statistical Office. We also have Jonathan Lamb, who is the International Representative for the Migration, Children and Youth Platform, who are very close partners in IDAC. And last but not least, we have Tarek Abu Shabak, who's the Chief Statistician at UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency, and member also of the IDAC Secretariat, who will deliver some closing remarks. So just a bit of a housekeeping note. So we'll have a series of presentations, and then we'll open the floor for questions, both in the room and online. We'll try to get through as many of them as possible. And we'll probably run a little bit late, but I hope that the discussion will be interesting enough, and I'm sure for all of you to stick around after that. For the participants who are joining us online, please feel free to type your questions during the event using the chat function, the Q&A function. We'll select a few of those questions. So throughout the event, please feel free to do that. Just mention your affiliation and to whom the question is addressed to, and we'll get through them, hopefully as many as possible. And now, before we get into the presentations and into the exchange, we should have, yes, a QR code for all of you here in New York and online. Just three very brief questions that we wanted to run by you, also to make this a little bit more interactive in a very short time. So please scan the QR code, and we'd love to hear from you. This is anonymous, and we'll see the results in real time. I'm sure you've done this before through Mentimeter or similar tools. Just wanted to sense a little bit what people's experiences, practices with communicating about migration statistics is in a very immediate way. So I hope the link is working and we have no more IT crisis today. Perfect. Maybe one more minute and then we'll switch to the results. All right. Maybe we can move on to the side. Thank you, Rose. All right. So we had the first question. What does good communication of migration statistics look like to you? You have a bit of a word cloud here, some keywords that are appearing: transparent, clear, accurate, honest, accessible, simple, and then many other inputs, concrete examples, understandable, visualization, trust, inclusive. Excellent. We don't have much time, so move on to the next question. Results for the next question. We're asked you to rate how effective is your agency or entity's communication of data and statistics. No responses. Do we gather not effective at all or just very effective? We have to, oh, it's not working. We have one more IT crisis. Back to the QR code. Thank you, Daniel. It's just not our day with IT. It's sometimes you have to let it go. We'll just move on. Thank you very much for all your inputs. Again, we do not have much time. We have a packed agenda and our speakers have been waiting long enough. So we'll move on to the presentations. The first will be a joint presentation. So I'm pleased to introduce again the three speakers. We have Maria Isabel Cobos, Chief of Social and Gender Statistics Section at the UN Statistics Division. Maria Isabel leads the program on social and gender statistics of the UN Statistics Division, and she joined the UN over 17 years ago, being posted at HQ and ECLAC, the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean. And her career encompasses coordinating the UN Statistical Commission, which is ongoing this week, supporting countries in various statistical fields, notably international migration and population estimates and projections, among several others. Then we have Robert McNeil, who is the Deputy Director of Migration Observatory at the University of Oxford, and his work examines the social environments from which news stories and narratives about migration and migrants emerge, and how media debate affects migration and policy decisions, and vice versa, and how information gaps affect the way these issues are discussed. And Peter, again, there are three of them are presenting together. Peter Walsh is a senior researcher and lecturer in migration studies at the Migration Observatory, and his research focuses on UK immigration policy and statistics, including asylum, illegal immigration or irregular detention, and deportation. So many thanks for joining us, and over to you. We have some slides.
Hi. Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Marcia, for this introduction. We are really happy. I'm very excited personally to be here to talk to you about what we have been working with Peter and Rob and with the IDAC and UNICEF for a while. So yeah, just to put this into context, the development of this technical report is part of the UN efforts to revise and update the 1998 recommendations on statistics on migration. Of course, based on building on the work that the community has been done for the past decades, and also the 2030 agenda, and particularly the first objective of the GCM, which is based on the use of data for meaningful policy making. Next, please. So in 2018, the Statistical Commission set up an expert group to work on that precisely, to revise and update the recommendations that were dated from 1998. And since then, we have brought to the Commission for endorsement in 2021, we brought the first piece, the conceptual framework for statistics on migration and mobility, which clearly identifies the difference between temporary mobility and real migration. In 2023, the expert group also identified 6 policy areas that are in need to be nurtured with data. And for each policy area, they also came up with a list of indicators, basically building on the 2030 SDG indicators. And most recently, last year, we finally brought the full book, the full recommendations, which were endorsed by the Commission last year. And one of the chapters, the recommendations contain a lot of innovations, methodological as well, but in particular, a chapter that is focused on communication about migration statistics, communication with stakeholders. By nature, the migration is a phenomenon that is captured from different angles of the government. Each piece of the data comes from different places. So communication across government agencies is key. Otherwise, statistics are not based on good quality data. So that is one aspect. The other aspect is that, of course, migrant populations, in particular youth and children, have particular specificities that need to be taken into account. So communication with them is also a key part. And it really depends on what kind of data collection the NSO or the other government agencies does, if it's a field collection or if it's use or reuse of admin data is a different manner. And finally, that of course it is no secret that migration is becoming a polarizing phenomena. So the communicating about migration statistics becomes the most important thing, really at the center of the NSO's work and tasks. Next, please. So the recommendations that were endorsed are accompanied by a set of technical reports that are at the disposal of NSOs and other government agencies. For example, the data integration, data sources. Upcoming, we are working on the expert group on refugees, IDPs and settlement statistics on a report that looks at methodological alignment of the different conceptual frameworks. And now we are launching this one that we conceived and developed together with IDAC. And once we had a chapter within the recommendations, we couldn't stop working on that. Perhaps we were the worst clients for Rob and Peter, because at the beginning, the first time that we got together with them, we were really struggling to articulate what we wanted. We sort of had an outline, and we knew in our veins that it was an important issue to address, but we really couldn't see it like in practice. So they were really patient with us, and I'm really grateful for that. And now we are finally launching this report that expands the content of that chapter that is contained in the recommendation. So we are really proud. And just a final thought. I also have in my notes, because the Friday seminar on AI readiness for official statistics that launched the side events for the Commission really resonated with me and made me think about this particular event and publication. For example, the key messages that agile engagement with stakeholders is key, that we need to invest as statistical community in the relationship with our stakeholders, that we need to clearly explain to digital and mainstream media. So all those messages, I felt honestly kind of proud that we had already sort of embedded these kind of messages into the report. So with that, I hand over to Rob and Peter so that they take us through the contents of the report. Thank you.
Thanks. I might just wait for a second. Are the slides? The slides seem to be in a slightly. So, well, so we should. Yeah. So could we go to the next slide then, please? And the next one, sorry. Oh, sorry. In fact, sorry. So are we going? I thought you were going to do these ones as well. No. Well, it doesn't matter. That's fine. I don't mind talking about this. That's fine. Okay. So there's several points that we can cover. I actually did not prepare for this particular slide because I thought I was going to start from a slightly later one, but that's no problem. But this deals with the fact that the official statistics underpin a kind of triangular process, in which you essentially have an array of different participants, an array of different kind of actors that shape the way that migration policy is understood and discussed. So everything from research on one side through to public debate on the other side, and then also obviously policy making as well. But within all of those, within that triangular of things that influence one another, we have a situation where there is one central thing that we desperately need to make sure that everything is speaking together, moving together, and that is quality official statistics. So if we can move to the next slide, please. So a central theme, and I would say possibly even the central theme within the report as a whole, is the need to tell the story of the data that we deal with here. And I want to actually just take a quote, because there's a challenge sometimes in talking to statisticians about storytelling. And I think that it's very important that we actually just address the critical importance of storytelling in people's cognitive ability to actually understand things. So I'm going to just read you quickly a quote from a guy called Professor Klaus Wilke in his book, the Fundamentals of Data Visualization, in which he says, "The need for a story may seem disturbing to scientists and engineers who may equate it with making things up, putting a spin on things, or overselling results. However, this perspective misses the important point that stories play in reasoning and memory. We get excited when we hear a good story, and we get bored when the story is bad or if there is none. And this is possibly the most important. Moreover, he says, any communication creates a story in the audience's mind. And if we don't provide a clear story ourselves, then our audiences will make one up." And so this role that we have to play in actually structuring the information that we provide for people with narrative, with explanation, is fundamental. And just for clarity, this has always been what national statistical offices have done in one way or another. We look at the origins of these things a little bit, including Sweden's tabelverket, which I'm not, sorry, I'd just like to apologize for my pronunciation there. Which is arguably the oldest of all population data registers that has been in the world. And this began from a process of trying to understand and explain the situation that the country was in a way which allowed decision-making to be made, policy decision-making and military decision-making as well. So data storytelling has always been a fundamental part of the job of statistical offices, and we focus in very hard on the role that you have to play in doing that effectively. Peter, I think if we can move to the next slide, I think Peter, you're going to take this one.
Now, when we talk about communication in our report, we're not just talking about the dissemination of final products, the communication of statistical analysis. Instead, we take a much broader view of communications activities to include those that begin at the very start of the statistics life cycle. Now, that life cycle has 4 distinct phases. First, you have to define the key audiences for your statistics. Who are the statistics for? Is it for policymakers, journalists, researchers, businesses, or the inquiring public? Second, you need to communicate with these audiences to work out what are their statistical needs. And you can do that through stakeholder consultations, expert groups, user surveys. That's really critical so that the statistics you produce, they are needed, they are used, and they are demand driven. Third, once we know what data we need to engage in open communication with the communities whose data we're collecting. Early communication with these groups that is tailored to cultural and linguistic contexts is really essential to building trust and encouraging participation in the data gathering process. So that's number 3. 4, after the data has been collected, communications then can shift to the dissemination of statistical products. And here it's critical to consider the full range of dissemination channels that might be available to communicate not only what the data does tell us, but what it doesn't and its limitations, any changes to established products, and to gather user feedback on statistics and monitor how they are used. And again, we don't forget our data respondents. We remain open communication with them to solicit feedback on the data collection process, yes, but also to share with them the findings of the research. And in so doing, to convey that, look, you are not just the objects of research, but are active co-producers of knowledge, without whom we wouldn't be able to generate statistics in the first place. So we call this the end-to-end approach to communicating about migration statistics, counter to what we might call the broadcast approach, which focuses very narrowly on just communicating final products, but this is embedded right from the very start. And in combination with this, we also suggest that communicating migration statistics requires a coordinated whole of government approach. And that's because migration is necessarily cross-cutting. Administrative data are dispersed across ministries. National statistical offices, for that reason, must build strong interagency partnerships to harmonize concepts, use consistent definitions and terminology. Now that operates both vertically from the level of national to regional and local government, but also horizontally as well. That's across government departments and internationally.
If we can move to the next slide, please, that would be great. So we also look at ethics. Obviously, it's impossible to talk about this without thinking about ethics, I think. And our starting point for this has already been referred to, which is that data is not just numbers. Data are not just numbers, rather. Data, I mean, every data point is a snapshot of a human life. And in order for us to reasonably communicate about these things, we have to recognize that the way that we do this, the way that we talk about these things can have impacts on people's lives. So there are a number of, I mean, we've obviously gone through this in some detail, but just there are 4 sections that we've outlined on the slides here now, which I think are all important in recognizing how we need to think about the ethics of communicating about migration statistics. The first is thinking about the neutrality of the language that we use. Now, we're not talking here about policing the words that people use in order to talk about things. We're not talking about trying to tell people how they can or can't speak about an issue, but we are thinking about recognizing that words can be loaded. Words are things that carry meaning with them. And so therefore, if you don't use the right kind of terminology, if you don't use the right kind of language about things, you can have impact on the way that people think about things. And that's both in the data collection process and how you actually approach people about things in the first place, all the way through to the dissemination process as well. We obviously talk about the fact that data needs to be collected in a way which is independent from government and government policy. Not independent from government, but independent from the politics of states. And the NSOs should avoid getting dragged into politics. And that can actually mean taking a stand for balance and accuracy against the sort of demand for political impact from the statistics that might be generated. So that's not turning around and pushing back against a state that is asking you to collect data, but it is making sure that what you do collect and the way that you present it provides an accurate and whole picture about the scenarios that are being engaged with. Clearly, we have to think about privacy considerations, and we have to think about making sure that people, and particularly, I mean, not exclusively, but children, adults, any vulnerable groups are protected from their identities being revealed through the processes by which we collect and disseminate information. And critically, we also have to think about the fact that mistakes do get made, and we have to be honest about correcting these things and doing it openly and transparently, making sure that we notify people when we are doing so, and also when we are removing data sets or moving away from certain ways of talking about things, explaining why and how. So clarifying how we do these things. If we can move to the next slide, please. So the next section is looking at children, adolescents, and youth. And I need to be able to turn around and look at the screen here just to actually recall so far, as far as we could make out in the process of doing this, there has not yet been a set of guidelines that has been specifically focused on the process of communicating about migrant children, adults, and youth. So we've attempted to codify some basic practices that we suggest that people should embed into the way that they do these things. We've summarized these things here. So the first is that people should do no harm. That the collection of the data the collection and the dissemination of data should minimize impact on the individuals that are participating in this. The other one is obviously building on the previous note on the ethics, is to ensure that we always anonymize the data and that children in particular are protected from any risk that their identities may be revealed through the processes by which we undertake these practices. Avoiding the instrumentalization of children, avoiding putting them in a situation where they become pawns or tools in political or religious or other types of polarizing and polarized debates about migration is extraordinarily important. Focusing on ensuring the consent of those individuals is fundamental in the same way as it is with adults. This can be considerably more difficult because it's obviously more challenging, particularly in the case of unaccompanied children, to ensure that they have a full understanding and are informed about what they are participating in, particularly if the data that you are producing or the way that you are shaping the narratives around them has the potential to have a long tail that may affect them throughout the course of their lives. Respecting their ability to refuse to participate in data collection is important as well. Children should be treated with the same right. Should children have the same rights as adults? Let's be clear. And it is important that throughout the data collection and the data dissemination process that they are treated in that way, and that where possible, children should actually be involved in the process of the data collection and dissemination process, insofar as they should know what is going on with it, they should be told how it's going to be used, they should be made aware of these things. The more that they are informed, the more that they're involved, the better the choices that they can make are about how their data will be used throughout the course of that data life cycle. If we can move to the next slide, please. So we also provide a series of guidelines on actually how to undertake basic communications practices. This follows what the SMART, the specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound process that is common in the way that in the development of any kind of strategies. We set out one thing I should say about this is that this is absolutely key. You need to have a plan. You can't just have a hope that the data that you produce and share is going to be effectively understood and that people are going to engage with it well and understand it properly. So the way that we've set this out very straightforwardly is a straightforward communication strategy building approach, which is that you start with a plan where you develop a rationale, you establish your objectives, you analyze the external context into which your materials are going to be shared. You determine the key messages, you identify your audiences and their needs, you select the appropriate channels and tools in order to speak to those people, and then you develop an output plan, a dissemination plan. You identify the resources that you need in order to do that, create a detailed timeline to set out things so you make sure that things are actually speaking to people at a time when it is appropriate and where it can actually have the impact that it needs to have. You identify the risks that you have of potentially sharing this information with people, establish clear approval procedures, and then you define your success and set goals, and then obviously evaluate the process afterwards. We also set out a series of different ways that you can actually ensure that the materials that you produce for your website, for your press materials, or the social media content is effective and lands well. And if we can move to the last of my slides anyway. So the key takeaways from the whole report are that the first thing is that effective communication really matters. It makes a huge difference to the way that your statistics can be involved and to the way that you can inform public debates and reduce polarization, reduce demand for problematic content. Telling the story of the data is extremely important. Explaining how a person got to be in a data set in the first place is key so that people can actually understand what the data does tell them, what it does not tell them. Ensuring that we follow that end-to-end approach that Peter was talking about before and the whole of government approach where everybody is actually speaking together and the process is organized right from the beginning where you start thinking about undertaking data collection in the first place all the way through to the actual dissemination of that data and the evaluation process that goes on afterwards is critical. Working cooperating not just across government, but with other agencies, with NGOs, with international agencies is critical too. Making sure that you follow solid ethical processes, place people at the center of everything that you do, design the work that you do for users, and follow strategies and strategic plans in order to actually disseminate your work effectively. Now, the work I would say that the report communicates all of this considerably more eloquently than I've been able to do it right now. But anyway, so that's the end of my bit of this. I hope I haven't rabbited on for too long. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Maria Isabel, Peter, and Robert, for this great overview of this new report we're launching today. So we just put the link, I think, in the chat to the report. So we look forward to all of you engaging with its content. As you heard, it's quite thought-provoking in a way. There are quite some ideas in there that national statistical offices may find quite thought-provoking, and we look forward to your reviews as well. And we thank also everyone who contributed feedback and ideas to the report, from the expert group on migration statistics to other colleagues also within UNICEF who worked particularly on responsibility and data for children. So we now move on to the next segment of this event, where we have 3 good practices from national statistical offices or entities responsible for producing migration statistics. And I am honored to introduce the first speaker who is joining us online, Ms. Daniela Nedic. Thank you so much, Daniela. So Ms. Daniela Nedic, I hope you can hear us. We can see you now, perfect. Ms. Nedic is the Acting Assistant Commissioner at the Commissariat for Refugees and Migration in Serbia, and specifically the Sector for Reception, Accommodation, Readmission, Durable Solutions, and Asylum. She has spent the majority of her professional career at the Commissariat for Refugees and Migration, where she served as an advisor for cooperation with international governmental and non-governmental organizations, as well as an independent advisor responsible for monitoring and implementing international regulations in the process of return and reintegration. So Ms. Nedic, thank you so much for being with us at this late hour in Belgrade again, and over to you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to be here, even online. It is a great honor for me to participate in this event, and I'm pleased to have the opportunity to contribute to this important discussion and share our experience. Our work on the ground constantly reminds us that migration statistics are not just numbers, they represent real people, real families, and real challenges. That is why discussions like this one are essential for common efforts. In accordance with the law on migration management, which also is the overreaching law in the field of migration, the Commissariat is responsible for tasks related to the collection, consolidation, and analysis of data and indicators for migration management, reporting on immigration and emigration, as well as the preparation and regular updating of the migration profile of the Republic of Serbia. Next slide, please. Yes, thank you. For 15 consecutive years, the Republic of Serbia has been autonomously developing the migration profile of the Republic of Serbia, while the Commissariat for Refugees and Migration actively participates in development and coordinates the entire process of preparing the migration profile. The development of the migration profile and its regular updating was the obligation of the Republic of Serbia in accordance with the visa liberalization roadmap, as well as the specific goal set by the strategy of migration management. The migration profiles give a general overview of statistics on migration and policies in the country. Data on different categories of migrants are collected from competent institutions with specific focus on disaggregation of data and gender and age. This is a document which complies that on all categories of migrants in the country, classified in accordance with the regulation 862 from 2007 of the European Parliament. For the first time, the migration profile from 2020 of the Republic of Serbia includes SDG indicators that are specific to migration. The migration-specific indicators were developed in cooperation with UN and UNHCR. Next slide, please. The analysis for gender and age sensitive of the migration profile of the Republic of Serbia was conducted with support from UNICEF within the Promoting Evidence-Based Migration Management to Maximize Migration Development Potential project. The analysis aims to identify existing practice in data collection and processing to identify institutional and methodology constraints and to formulate recommendations for improving the quality and inclusiveness of data. The analysis includes a review of the national legal and institutional framework. The results indicate that although the migration profile systematically includes data disaggregated by gender and age, there is a room for improvement in their presentation, interpretation, and the consistent integration of age and gender sensitive information. Based on the identified gaps, the analysis proposes concrete guidelines for improving the collection, processing and presentation of data with the aim of strengthening capacity for evidence-based policy making as well as effective protection and support for the most vulnerable groups of migrants, particularly children and women. The key findings of this analysis show that the biggest gaps in age and gender disaggregated data are presented in important areas such as immigration, temporary residence, labor migration, and accusation of citizenship. Particularly highlighted is the insufficient visibility of children in most of these areas, which significantly limits the planning of protection, support, and integration measures. Next slide, please. The new communication strategy from 2025 is based on two principles: the evidence based on data-driven approach. Additionally, this strategy has recognized institutions and partners engaged in migration management to be as reliable and transparent source of verified information. Increase this visibility of the work of all institutions within the migration management system and affirm their role as relevant and reliable actors. The communication strategy is aimed at building trust, breaking down stereotypes, and fostering understanding, while showing respect both toward migrants and toward local communities. Migrants are recognized as an integral part of society and as a key contribution to development. Next slide, please. The next steps are that we have begun to mapping the GCM and IDAC indicators with the reporting framework. The indicators will be included in the following migration profile of the Republic of Serbia. Based mention activities, the working group for reporting in the field of migration management plays important role in migration management in Serbia. The working group is established by Commissariat and including 14 relevant stakeholders, authorities. The main task of working group is to ensure efficient and timely exchange of data and information on migration flow and policies. We continue with the good practice in the sense of continuous communication with competent stakeholders, NGOs, and wider public. Next slide. And if you want to see more information about our migration profile, it's on our website. This is the information where you could find our migration profile. Thank you. That will be all. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Ms. Neric. I hope you can hear the applause online. Thank you for presenting your efforts on the National Migration Profile for Serbia, which is truly a great example of the whole of government approach to also, and an end-to-end approach as well, to communicating about migration statistics and to presenting migration statistics. And we're very happy also to hear about the inclusion of IDAC indicators, and we're very grateful for this partnership at IDAC. So thank you so much for all your efforts in this regard in Serbia. We now turn to the second national practice, and it's from the Asian continent, and I'm very pleased to introduce Dr. Amalia Ardiningal Vidyasanti, who's the chief statistician at Statistics Indonesia, Badan Pusat Statistik. I hope I'm not really mispronouncing that. Dr. Vidyasanti is an accomplished economist with more than 2 decades of experience in national development planning and economic policy. And before leading BPS, she served as Deputy Minister for Economic Affairs at Indonesia's Ministry of National Development Planning, where she played a central role in macroeconomic policy, sustainable development strategy, and the integration of data into national decision-making. So we're very, very honored to have you here with us. Thank you so much, and the floor is yours, Dr. Amalia.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. This is a good opportunity for us to share with you regarding to Indonesia's experiences in communicating migration statistics. But before that, I would like to explain to you regarding to Indonesia migration data landscape and its challenges. As Indonesia is the second largest migrant sending countries in the Southeast Asia, and the 7th in Asia Pacific, with an estimated around 4.6 million people emigrate, according to the UN data 2020. And according to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Indonesia, it is recorded that 2.5 million Indonesians currently residing abroad. And Migrant Worker Protection Board records almost 300,000 migrant worker placement each year, increasing concerns on well-being of their children left behind. And the data challenges that we are now facing is data for migrant is actually now scattered across institutions. Migration-related statistics in Indonesia is partially produced by migrant workers, by some ministries to serve different purposes. And the second challenge is complete, timely, and disaggregated statistics are not yet in place. Surveys face methodological limits, while administrative data suffers from unclear concept and definition, and also they are not a standard data collection. And the third challenge is migration data governance. It is not yet in place. Regulatory barriers and limited data access or interoperability restrict effective data integration. And also we are facing comprehensive analysis and dissemination. But however, Indonesia still committed to develop the migrant statistics. Despite those challenges, we are now managing to develop a synergy on international migration data, and we call it SDMI. It is actually a national initiative to strengthen migration data governance. And secondly, this initiative is a transformation to gather the fragmented migration data into a harmonized, interoperable, and policy-driven system under a shared standards to enable evidence-based migration governance. So actually, we are started the initiative since 2019, and then year by year we are trying to develop step by step, and then in 2021 we already identified the international migration related data produced by ministries or agencies, and we are trying to collect those together in one platform. In 2022, the cross-sectoral dialogue and identification of data interoperability is trying to start to be discussed and developed. And then in 2023, the development of the proposed blueprint and roadmap, and we are now, and on that year, we are prepared the metadata standards and capacity building related to the international migration. And of course, in 2024 to 2029, we are trying to build an agreement, develop the platform, and also trying to build an interoperability and data analysis to support the policy making on migration policy. Now, what have been improved in migration data availability, and then we try to integrate into official statistical systems. We started with the population census. There is a lifetime and 5-year migration, child household. And also we have a survey on labor force and survey on social and economic, national, social and economic in national level, such as commuter mobility and youth labor migration. And we also have a potency data, we call it the village potential statistics, which is data on individual originating from the village level who reside abroad. And we also trying to utilize administrative data and big data, such as mobile positioning data utilization for mobility and mobility analytics. And also we are trying to explore cross-border movement data to international migration flow indicators. We're trying to linking administrative data from Ministry for Migrant Worker Affairs with other data sources to estimate the number of children affected by the labor migration. So we're trying, and next step is we're trying to have a very close collaboration with stakeholders. And then since last year, we manage and launch a new national integrated socio-economic data framework. We call it the DTSAN. DTSAN is actually an integrated data by name, by address for the whole population of Indonesia. And then this DTSAN is actually the first in Indonesian history that we have this such integrated data for the whole population with the social and economic indicators, variables for each person. And then now Indonesia utilize this national integrated socio-economic data framework to for social assistance and also for the intervention for many policies by the government. And next is actually we trying to harmonize the concept and indicator clarification. Migration related data in Indonesia are produced by multiple institutions for different policy purposes, as I mentioned before. And differences in statistical concept and measurement approaches may result in figures that appear inconsistent. For example, BPS usual residence is defined as minimum 1 year stay, but the other ministry, migrant ministry, mentioning that number, they collected about number of migrant worker placement services, and Ministry of Foreign Affairs having the data on registered Indonesian citizens abroad. And then these varieties in data sets measure different units and population. And each concept and definition on migration issue from government agencies is, we try to collect it together and we try to harmonize it into the Indonesia Data Hub. We call it INDAH. This is a platform which is under the address of the platform is indah.bps.go.id. And then we're trying, even though there is still some inconsistency across the data sources, but we're trying to harmonize it and we're trying to collect it and make it into a platform, the Indonesia Data Hub. And what is next is actually we're trying to have a policy framework, policy engagement, and we have the presidential regulation with providing technical input on migrant worker governance. And on that regulation, BPS is mandated to support the integration of Indonesian migrant worker data and support the periodic availability of migrant worker statistics. And then BPS Indonesia works very closely with the Ministry of Manpower and Ministry of Migrant Worker Affairs. And then, of course, this collaboration under the umbrella of this regulation, it can contribute to improve data integration and consistency across administrative systems. BPS strengthened Indonesia's migration governance reform through coordinated and coherent statistical systems. So this is the role of BPS Statistics Indonesia, that at first the inconsistent data sources, and we're trying to harmonize it. And then by having an umbrella, under the umbrella of presidential regulation, that BPS is mandated to support the integration of the different data sources. And I think this is one of the reform that BPS Statistics Indonesia can contribute for the migration statistics. So now we have SDMI platform, a window of migration information, which is still in the progress of the development. So under the SDMI platform, we have data visualization that transform data into visuals for better understanding of the reader or the user. On that platform, there is a landing page that also showing the data catalog, which is a compilation of standardized data on migration from various ministries and government agencies. The website is currently undergoing security testing, and then we are planning to launch it in 2026 this year. And under this platform, there will be also a data storytelling. That's the one that they mentioned, that data is not only about the numbers, but we have to be able to provide a storytelling from the data that we provide. So meaning that on this landing page and on this SDMI platform, we can turning migration data into a storytelling, and that will be very useful for the policymakers and the users. So key takeaways that SDMI, we learn from the journey started in 2019 that again, collaboration is the key, commitment also is the key, and then SDMI platform can strengthen migration governance not only through the data integration, but also fostering trust, enhancing legal clarity, promoting institutional dialogue, and also building strategic partnership, which is very important. Without partnership, that it is less likely we can have SDMI platform that that will be launched this year. So again, the 6 key takeaway is that we have to improve migration data availability. It is not perfect, but it is progressing, and the quality have to be improved. But again, the implementation of migration-related questions in census and survey will be in progress. And secondly, close collaboration with key ministry is a must, and also data sharing is very much important, and it has to be institutionalized. And statistical literacy and advocacy also important. Active policy engagement, and the last one is strategic partnership, so we can maintain SDMI to be always be updated, because it is not just one time development of a platform, but the platform have to be continuously updated, so it can be very useful and beneficial for the policymakers and also for the users. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Amalia. That was a wonderful presentation and very impressive also national practices, and also the importance and the linkages between communication and all, institutional coherence and trust and migration governance. So thank you for highlighting those points. We're also very proud of the collaboration that we have as part of IDAC with BPS Indonesia and all the work planned in the next months. So thank you for being with us today. So we now turn to the third national practice. I'm very pleased to introduce Dr. Gojita Todradze from the National Statistical Office of Georgia. Mr. Todradze has held various positions at the National Statistical Office of Georgia since 2002, was head of Business Statistics Division, and held the post also of Deputy Executive Director between 2016 and 2018. And he's actively contributed to global statistical development on behalf of Geostat. So thank you so much for being with us today. Over to you.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Hello, everyone. This is my pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for giving this opportunity. So, next slide, please. Yeah. Okay. I will start with highlighting the importance of production of migration statistics in Georgia. So, why does migration statistics matter for us? There are several reasons. First, Georgia has a long history of forced internally displaced person and internal displacement due to unresolved conflicts. This is a reality we cannot ignore in our data. Second, in recent years, we have seen growing transit and immigration flow, which creates new statistical demands. And third, and very importantly, Georgia is an EU candidate country. This means our migration data is essential for EU accession reporting, and the standards we must meet are high, actually. We also joined the European Migration Network as an observer, which brings regular reporting obligations, and our own migration strategy for 2021-2030 explicitly identifies the need for stronger migration statistics. So explicitly, there's both internal and external pressure to get this right, but as I will show, good data alone is not actually enough. how we communicate that data is really equally important. Next slide, please. Georgia's commitment to migration statistics is not informal or ad hoc. It is written into strategy of nation statistical system for coming next 4 years. Among the specific migration commitments, we will develop new migration indicators using big data and administrative data sources. We're gonna use mobile positioning data for production of human mobility statistics like domestic tourism and internal migration. We will be the population register as well, which will form the foundation for much more reliable migration estimates from 2026 onwards. We will establish a database on return immigrants as well, on area where our data is currently very weak, and we will strengthen interagency coordination through formal working groups, which is also utmost important. On the communication side, our strategy sets ambitious targets for increasing access to and the use of official statistics, including migration data, through improved digital tools and interactive data dissemination channels. Next slide, please. Now let me describe where we stand with our migration data today. We have two main data sources. The first is, of course, administrative data, specifically from the Ministry of Internal Affairs, which provides us very fruitful information on migration inflows and outflows since 2012. The second is also population census, which gives us data on stocks of immigrants. These two sources together form actually the backbone of our migration statistical system. And I am pleased to say that our most recent census 2024, will significantly strengthen this picture. Next slide, please. Speaking of census 2024, this was a major milestone for us. The census ran from November 14 to the end of December 2024. We used actually first time in the history of population censuses in Georgia, this fully electronic approach. We started data collection with CAVI, self-remuneration, followed by CAPI. So the publication of the census result is planned in 2 stages. Preliminary results was already published in June last year, and also in April this year, and in June this year, 2026, we're gonna publish this final detailed results. Next slide, please. Okay, right. This slide gives a clear picture on what data we have and what we are still missing. For migrant stocks, we have rich information such as sex, age, previous country of residence, year of migration purpose, citizenship, country of birth, education, economic activity, and so on and so forth. However, for annual flow data from administrative sources, the picture is more limited. As you see, we have sex, age, and citizenship, but we are missing purpose of migration, education, also economic activity and employment status, and also country of destination. Being transparent about these gaps, it itself part of our communication strategy. We do not hide what we do know. We explain it, and we work actually to fill those gaps. Next slide, please. So how do we communicate migration data in practice, we use 5 main approaches. First, we publish analytical reports and migration profiles, not just raw numbers, but contextualized analysis that helps users understand the trends, and also this is accompanied by fruitful also metadata documents, which is really important for us, for producers of official statistics, to make sure that data we produce has high quality. And this is also really important for our users to to understand these statistics and to use it for decision making and for policy execution. Second, we use data visualization and interactive tools on the Geostat website, so users can explore the data themselves. And third, we do proactive media outreach around major data releases. We give journalists the context they need and report accurately. Fourth, we use social media, infographics, and news updates that reach a growing audience. And fifth, and this is our key good practices, we coordinate across agencies through the State Commission on Migration Issues. This means all government institutions communicate with one aligned, consistent message. No contradictions, no confusions for the public. Next slide, please. This slide, this side event actually today has a special focus on children on the move, and I want to highlight what Geostat does specifically for children statistics. We have 2 dedicated platform and interactive portal on children's and youth, and the statistics for kids and teenagers portal, which presents data in child-friendly, accessible format for young people age 8 to 19. Actually, our key principles on this matter is simple but powerful. Making children visible in data is a prerequisite for making them visible in policy. If children, including migrant children, do not appear in our statistics, they actually do not appear on the policy agenda, you know. This is why we invest specifically in disaggregated child-focused data and communication. Next slide, please. And this is actually my last slide. Looking ahead, our most important development is the establishment of a population register. A population register has the potential to transform our migration statistics, giving us access to information that is currently unavailable, including both internal and international migration flows in real time. We have already taken concrete steps. On interagency working group has been established. The main data sources have been identified, and roadmap has been developed in cooperating with statistics, Finland, Germany, and Italy. And importantly, our next population census will be at least partially register-based, hopefully. This is a long-term investment, but it will fundamentally improve both the quality and the timeliness of migration data in Georgia. And to conclude, Georgia's experience shows that communicating migration statistics effectively requires 3 things. First, institutional independence to be credible. Second, cross-agency coordination to be consistent, and a genuine commitment to making data accessible to all interesting users. So that was my presentation. I hope I'm on time. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tudratze. You're perfectly on time. We are not on time. I'm sorry we're running so behind schedule. We have one more intervention. First of all, I wanted to thank Dr. Tudratze for those remarks and particularly appreciate the examples of the statistics or the portals that are child-friendly and youth-friendly. I thought that was really an excellent example. And also you're highlighting making children visible in data so that they can be visible in policy, which is really the IDAC mission. So thank you so much for being a great example of that. Now we move on very quickly to the last speaker of the session, and then we'll open up briefly for Q&A for those of you who are still here with us online and here in New York. So I'm very pleased to welcome Jonathan Lamb, who's the international representative for the Migration, Youth and Children Platform here in New York. Collaborate very closely with MyCP on a range of issues, and we're delighted really to have you with us, Jonathan. So I'd like to hand over to you for your remarks. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I know we're behind schedule. We only have 2 slides, so hopefully that helps with the focus. My name is Jonathan Lamb. I'm the international representative for the Migration, Youth and Children Platform. We are an international global youth forum that engages with over 10,000 youth worldwide and represent over 4,000 organizations. We have engaged with 100,000 youth and we represent 75 countries. And so we try to have a different perspective and diverse perspective of fields of youth, not just in North America, but in Asia, Europe, Africa, in Latin America as well. So next slide. So this is just an introduction of our organization and our mission, just basically all the information that I laid out. But our main goal is to represent youth and especially migrant youth in global forums and discussions, especially with the International Migration Review Forum happening in May. We have different priorities. These different priorities are kind of issue areas that impact migrant youth. And so some of those priorities include alternatives to children and family detentions. We've known that immigrant youth, especially what we're seeing here in the US, without being too political, is the detention of migrant youth. And so those are some controversial issues impacting the migrant population. Other issues relate to labor and human trafficking, gender justice. And so in these different issues and areas, we kind of try to ensure that migrant youth are being represented and that their recommendations are being properly represented in these different forums that we engage in. So next slide. So before we talked about our safeguard practices, I think after reviewing this incredible report, there were 3 themes that really stuck out to me. Number 1 is storytelling data is very necessary. In order to have kind of the context around the data and numbers, there needs to be a story behind that gives us the information behind the different information that's being collected. Here at Migrant Youth at MYCP, we definitely work on a different empowerment approach framing that allows migrant youth to have complete authority and agency around the story that's being told. We want to make sure that while we represent youth, we want to make sure that there's ethics and moral principles that kind of structure these different representations. And so that's definitely one thing I think MYCP represents, and also something that we're able to link closely with the report. I think the second thing is ethical and human rights-based framing. I think overall, throughout the different presentations that were being shown here today, there's a common theme that vulnerable groups, especially youth, are definitely at risk when it comes to misrepresentation of data, misuse of data. And so at the Migrant Youth and Children Platform, we try to make sure that there's a proper representation, especially ethical practices relating to migration youth. We recently established a youth committee on migration data and displacement that kind of engages with different experts and provides different human rights practices to experts and researchers when they're engaging with migrant youth in vulnerable populations to ensure that their consent and privacy is being fully protected. The last pillar and value that we really resonated with in the report is the consideration of children and migrant youth. Something that we really care about in our safeguarding policy is that our policy applies to all youth, and we have kind of designated focal points. These designated safe focal points are these different individuals that kind of work with migrant youth if there's ever a uncomfortable situation that they're dealing with. The different processes and procedures that we kind of go through is kind of one, establishing these kind of safe breakout rooms, and these safe breakout rooms kind of ensures that there's consent to provide any information that the individual that's being impacted feels safe to include, and also ensuring that that individual is receiving kind of psychological care and different care and different perspectives into protecting how they feel and allowing them to feel comfortable in that situation. And so in the report, there was a lot of, I think, mentions of often youth are the most underrepresented and sometimes are the most vulnerable to misinterpretation, especially when there's data collection surrounding them, and often are spoken and often they're represented in these different reports and data studies, but rarely engaged with. And so I think to wrap up, we have a few recommendations in terms of ensuring that youth are properly being represented in data collection and that ethical practices are being maintained. And the first thing is to have youth in advisory roles and planning roles and not just having them as kind of part of these consultations. I think the main thing is that we want to ensure that while we engage with youth, that they're the ones also facilitating the conversations, that they're the ones that are being provided the roles of providing guidance and facilitations for these different conversations. And so proactively including youth is one meaningful way to ensure that there's ethical practices and that data collection is being transparent and ethical. The next thing is that while AI is being heavily used right now in a world where AI is rapidly growing and evolving, we want to be very cautious with how AI is being used. And so we want to make sure that AI is not replacing youth experiences and ensuring that we're engaging with directly impacted youth in their communities. The third thing is that when we're developing communication products and recommendations, including videos, kind of these policy recommendations, that youth are being a part of that process as well. We want to make sure that whatever kind of deliverable or project that we're working on, youth are being a part of that process and playing a role in kind of constructing of how a social media post is being constructed or how a film and video is being constructed. And so it's super important that we kind of incorporate youth in that process as well. And the last main recommendation is that while we have these different research reports and data collection, it's so important that we're sharing that back with these youth communities. I think this was a point that was shared earlier, but we want to make sure that the research and the data collection and findings themselves are accessible and translated to these different migrant populations. We don't just want them to be sort of the, I guess, individuals being surveyed, but we also want them to be the collaborators, and we want them to be able to deliver these resources as well. And so I think overall, my closing remarks, I really want to include that migrant youth are at risk, and that during a time where there's a lot of anti-immigrant rhetoric that we're seeing around the world, this is impacting youth. When we don't have data and transparency that kind of reflect on youth experiences, migrant youth experiences, their families and communities, we see that there's a lack of resources, there's a lack of support, there's a lack of policy that's being implemented to support migrant youth, whether that's in education, whether that's in labor, whether it's addressing these complex issues with detention alternatives. It's so important that migrant youth are included in these consultations and that they're not just the one being consulted, but also the ones driving the research and the data collection processes and procedures as well. And so we're hoping that with our safeguard policy that kind of hopefully inspires NGOs and other member states to adopt similar practices and models in their own ways of how they engage with migration youth. And as mentioned earlier, we're preparing for the Immigration Migration Review Forum that's happening in early May. And so if there's any NGOs or member states here that are going to be preparing for that here at MYCP, we're preparing for that forum. And so if anyone wants to engage in further discussion after this side event, we're very excited to and welcome that and have that further dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Thank you for being brief. Thank you for the powerful words, call to action for all of us. And again, we're very, very happy to have you here as a representative of the youth in this conversation about communicating migration statistics. I would like to, I know we're really over time, but I really wanted to sort of reward your patience and give at least one question to the online participant and one question here in the room. If there are any questions to our wonderful panelists here, we'll keep it very brief, and then we'll have some closing remarks from Tarek as well. So would anyone, I see a question in the chat here. It's very something that we have discussed and sort of the panel has touched upon. Social media can be very powerful as a means of disseminating collected data, but when it is the place for radical views on migration, how do producers of official statistics compete with such rhetoric in a common space? So it's a tough question. Who would like to give it a go?
So I think an important consideration is not trying to outcompete with people. I mean, like the role of national statistical offices in this kind of environment is to be forces of reason and authority. And so you can't prevent people deliberately taking your data and using it badly. What you can do is you can communicate it well yourselves. So I think it is important social media is a brilliant tool for sharing things. You have to understand the context into which you are sort of involving yourself. So you have to think about whether or not you're going to do more harm than good sometimes by actually joining in a debate which is already extremely sort of polarized and angry or whatever. Sometimes it's better to sit back and not participate in that if all you're going to do is make it worse. But broadly speaking, the data should be there, the data should be understood, the data should be made clear for people. And the role of national statistical offices is profoundly important in this situation, particularly in social media where there is so much misinformation. But what's also really important is that data, you should provide that material not just as here's a fact and I'm going to tell you that it's right. You should tell the story of it so that people understand how and why it's true, right? Because when people understand how and why something is true, then they learn and they understand and they move into a better place. So social media can do a brilliant job in helping people in reaching audiences that may not be seeing that kind of thing. But if all you do is bang someone over the head with a number, that's not going to sort of provide that authoritative understanding that you can provide in that way, if you see what I mean. Does that, yeah, if anybody else would like to.
Much, Robert. Would anyone else like to comment on this? The impact of social media, also the AI, right? Impact on misinformation, disinformation, and how national statistical offices or entities producing migration statistics are dealing with these issues right now.
Actually, nowadays social media plays really important role for data dissemination purposes, you know. We use social media channels for data dissemination, but at the moment we need to pay particular attention to the issues related misinterpretation, because users have no boundaries, you know, and we need to dealing with this data. We need to explain users. We need to disseminate this data with complete metadata where everything will be described. This is important for us, as I mentioned during my presentation. This is important for us, for producers of official statistics, to make sure that produced data is relevant and high quality, and this is also really important for any kind of users, even for kids and teenagers who are users of our data. That data that was collected by us has high quality.
Probably I would like to add some additional views on this. Social media is a very powerful to disseminate the data or the statistics that produced by the National Statistical Office. But the thing is that sometimes and quite often that the netizen, the social media users sometimes misinterpreted the statistics that we produce. So meaning that social media also need to be utilized to educate people how to read and understand the data and the statistics very well, and not misinterpreted the data that we produce. And the other one is because not all netizen or not all media social users are literate with the statistics. So we have also to try to make the information simpler and you know easy to understand, not a complicated one. So I think this is also the role of National Statistics Office, how to disseminate the data in a simpler way and easy to understand by common people.
I was just going to add something very briefly on the AI question, because I think this is important. I think in order to really, I mean, AI is complex and constantly changing, but if you can think, if you can try to work in the way that an AI works, if you can think in the way that that a large language model is going to collect information and then feed it to people, that will be helpful. So for national statistical offices to think about, for example, setting out their things with questions and answers, which is very much the way that large language models function, then that will be read well by large language models. Now, obviously, things may change in time, and the approaches may move, and we have to be constantly evolving the way that we do things. But if we can try and think like the audiences, and if we think of the AI almost as an audience here, it is quite helpful.
No hands up. I see no hands up. Thank you so much to everyone. No questions from the room. So you're, of course, welcome to follow up with every one of the speakers and panelists, and we'll share all the presentations and materials and report. Thank you for your patience again. But first, before you go, please don't go. We have our dear colleague and friend, Tarek Abu Shabak from UNHCR, Chief Statistician, IDAC Secretariat member, to deliver some closing remarks. So I will just hand it over to you very quickly. Thank you, Tarek.
Thank you very much. And the good news is I have no slides. Which will make you happy because it's going to be a 30 seconds elevator pitch, as we call it. Try to communicate here with data when you use data, of course. I think first, the fact that we needed a technical report about how to communicate about migration statistics is already a phenomenon in itself, because it means we are poor communicators as statisticians. So we needed somebody to tell us, or rather a piece of paper to tell us how to talk about it, which is, I think, a great achievement already to have it, first and foremost. So congrats to UNSD and the IDAC Secretariat and UNICEF, of course, to make it happen. Secondly, I cannot express it equally eloquently as Jonathan did, but I think we carry a bit of responsibility, all of us in one way or another, in making this a success story, in how we communicate about data and statistics, in particular in an area like migration and refugees and asylum seekers and children on the move, youth in general, etc. So all of you have a bit of an 1% responsibility in making it happen. I do call myself sometimes, I catch myself sometimes self-censoring certain elements, and it speaks to some of the speakers here that said, sometimes you do more harm than benefit if you communicate about certain data points, data stories and the like. So and in my business, which is the refugee business, unfortunately, as it looks like, is a very, very, very kind of agonizing and quite challenging topic. So I do censor sometimes myself in order not to tell a story well, but in order not to harm refugees. Because everybody who looks at what we do, 8 out of those stories will be positive and 2 will be negative, approximately. And I prefer not to have 2 negative stories out because it harms more than it does benefit. So that's important to keep in mind. Last but not least, we cannot do it alone. I think I learned it today. We all have to work hand in hand in partnership. IDAC is a good example how we can make it happen with IOM, UNHCR, UNICEF, OECD, and Eurostat as we form an alliance. And we don't only collect data and analyze data, we also communicate to each other in a quite effective way. And with that, on that note, thank you very much for coming here. Thank you to UNICEF for hosting us upstairs, having fed us on top of it, having taken us to the dungeon downstairs. Thank you to everybody online here. And a big applause to our 7 speakers, 6 in the room, 1 online, the magnificent 7. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tarek. Thank you, everyone, for sticking around online, in person. Very grateful for your patience. And please join me in thanking again our fantastic panelists here. One big round of applause again. Maybe online you're applauding, not here. I don't hear it, but please join me in thanking them again. And I wanted to thank as well the IDAC Secretariat team, the technical support that we got today. Please do follow IDAC and all our resources, follow our LinkedIn page. You will, again, share the link to the report, engage with it, get in touch, and we'd love to hear from you for further events as well. So thank you so much again. Thank you all.